Captain America 4 or Captain America Brave New World or Captain Falcon or Falcon America, whatever you want to call it, came out. It was the absolute mess that I think most people expected. I haven't heard a single person praise it who wasn't just one of those racist shill websites. Nerdrotic and those guys with the connections all talk about the behind the scenes stuff, and they know people at Disney and whatever. And they talked about how essentially the movie had to be entirely redrafted, entirely reshot multiple times. I mean, from what I can gather, it sounds like the movie's going to need 800 million ish minimum to even break even. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up in the 400 or 500 million range. It doesn't have good word of mouth, it appears. Unsurprising when you have a dog shit movie, I guess. And yeah, overall, you can tell, even if you're not looking for it, like consciously, you can tell on some level that it was completely redone. They brought in Giancarlo Esposito, who wasn't originally in it. So he has like really weirdly shot scenes, and there's a bunch of shots where there's ADR because they cut to the back of someone's head. It sounds like it was initially going to be pretty political. This one I would say was bending over backwards to be apolitical. Which, you know, political stuff, Marvel is not getting the benefit of the doubt from anybody at this point. You know, they're just not. As they shouldn't. I don't even know if they have writers or people in charge capable of making like a politically interesting movie that wouldn't just piss everyone off. It did sort of seem like they were initially going to have Harrison Ford be much more of sort of a, you know, Trump stand-in type guy. But it looks like they abandoned that for the most part. There is one line I thought that was probably left over, and that's right at the end of the movie where Falcon praises Harrison Ford for doing the right thing and stepping down because he wasn't qualified anymore. And you know, it's just one of those things that's like, okay then. Okay, buddy. I don't know. It to me, it had like sort of the hollowed out remnants of a movie that they probably did want to make more political, but because of the current era and how bad it sounds like the movie was initially, that got sidelined. So everything about it sort of just seeked to be bland, inoffensive, generic, whatever word you want to use. They just wanted it to exist, not piss anyone off, and for everyone just to move on. There's a bunch of stuff where they just keep having people not quite look at the camera, but almost, and be like, "You're Captain America." Like, oh, you deserve to be captain. You're the captain, blah, blah, blah. And it just feels really forced. Because for people who didn't watch the Falcon and Winter Soldier show, Endgame at this point was 6 years ago. Like, I bet a lot of people forgot that Captain America even gave him the shield at the end of that movie. And then I'm sure most people aren't aware of, the garbage that happened in Captain Falcon and Winter Soldier. I didn't go see it. But from the people who did see it, oh, sorry about that. The people who did watch both, it sounds like none of it was relevant. None of it was brought up again. And that was always going to be the problem with Disney Plus and them trying to expand the MCU across multiple universes. I don't know why these companies don't understand just on the most basic level. You can't assume 100% of your audience is going to stick with you across mediums. Like 343 for the Halo fans also tried this and it was disastrous. I mean, frankly, it kind of seems like they're still trying it. But, people who play video games might not read books. Or even if they do read books, in the case of 343, they might not read the Halo books. So when you put out a hard sci-fi trilogy that's like you're wanting to tie in to your video games after a trilogy has ended, you get the response of kind of what the hell is happening. And that is exactly how Halo 4 feels. That's why you get these massive exposition dumps in the MCU movies. Like, this movie had so much exposition, it was kind of crazy. And they made some really weird choices in Captain America. One being that it referenced the Hulk movie, which came out at this point almost 20 years ago. That I would wager most people don't even realize is part of the MCU. The one with Ed Norton before he got replaced by Mark Ruffalo. So you get a bunch of stuff in there where, like, there's one really funny line at the beginning where Harrison Ford is like, "Have you heard from Betty, my daughter?" And it's like, oh, great. Like, that's what we're doing in this movie. And that kind of stuff is just replete throughout the movie. You start off with this big ass news broadcast where they're like rattling off the events of the previous movie and everyone's relationships to try to give people context for what's happening. And of course, hardly any of it matters anyway. Like I mentioned, Giancarlo Esposito being brought in as like a kind of side villain, but really he's just there to connect some threads and give massive exposition dumps. And I feel bad for him because he's a good actor, and man, does he just get stuck being a dog shit villain in almost everything. One of the only times I actually saw him as a not dog shit villain was in the Maze Runner trilogy, which those movies were a pretty big bummer from the books. I actually like those books a lot. They're a bit more sci-fi. They made some major changes to like the disease, which obviously is a huge part of the story. And like when you make those changes, it just kind of makes it a bummer. I don't want to go off on a fucking tangent about the Maze Runner because I doubt most people have even seen it. And if they did, they probably didn't like them. But one of the cool things about that setup in the books is is in the movies, if you've seen them, well, mainly the second and third one, the the disease, what it does is make people violent, and it slowly makes you feral. And what they did in the movies was essentially turn them into zombies, which is like fast zombies. And when you sort of make the disease generic like that, I think it takes away um so in the book what the disease does, it's called the flare. It makes you feral but very slowly. Like at first you start off as kind of irritable, and then you just gradually go like kind of more and more crazy. And I think part of what makes it so good and so creepy is that it like they're essentially like zombie-ish and violent, but they're sentient. So you're essentially watching people just slowly lose their minds, which I think is a way more interesting disease. It allows for way more interesting interactions than what you get with fast zombies, which is essentially just, jump scares and you run away and whatever. Like there's some stuff in the books that happens that is tragic because there's people who are aware of what they're turning into, but they can't stop it. I mean, I don't want to compare it to like Alzheimer's, but it's one of those largely mental, debilitating diseases that is hard to watch people go through. So the books in that regard were way more interesting than just kind of generic zombies, generic bad guys, whatever. And that's kind of what the movie devolves into, is people fighting over zombies. The one thing the movies did do well, maybe better than the books, is the betrayal in the second movie. Because in the book, that betrayal happens, but it's kind of a weird staged thing where the character doesn't have a choice. The way the movie does it is that character made a choice and chose to betray the protagonist. So I think that was an upgrade, in the movie. But then there was a lot of weird casting. Like the person they cast to play Newt in the movie was Jojen or whatever from Game of Thrones. And he's like a little scrawny blonde kid. And in the book, he's described as like this giant, muscular, like really good looking guy. And like the kid's a good actor, but he just looks nothing like what was described, which is obviously always contentious and a bit of a downer when you're talking about casting. The the other thing that I wanted to talk about today was Skeleton Crew. Got I just saw an article that it never made the Nielsen top 10 for Nielsen originals this season, which is just, I don't think it's crazy surprising. I mean, I talked about the ratings a little bit in my own videos, but it is one of those things that you're like, man, just another notch in the old Star Wars being irrelevant belt. Like, it's hard to even comprehend Star Wars never making the top 10 in minutes watched with a new show. I mean, that also includes when they released, 2 episodes at once that first week. Like, that's bad. And to give you some idea, I covered the Halo TV show ratings when that show was coming out. And the Halo TV show, I think, was in the ratings, I want to say 5 out of the 8 weeks that it aired. Now, the one thing I will say is it came out like kind of right after the writer's strike. There was like nothing else out. And even like it being in the top 10, the viewership only translated to like 5 million-ish people throughout the season, which is not great, for an established IP like Halo, obviously. I mean, you're talking about games that even with Infinite sold tens of millions of fucking copies. And so it's not like that was a good performance. It just happened to come out at the right time, be relatively inoffensive. Well, sorry, relatively appealing to people who didn't have shit to do. But obviously the show got canceled. No one's fucking picking it up. I saw a thing the other day about maybe it getting picked up somewhere. I'll believe it when I fucking see it. I don't think that dog shit's getting picked up. And if it does, I think it'll be picked up under the guise of restarting. I don't think it's going to be picked up as like, yeah, let's fucking bring Pablo back and on to episode 3 we go, which is, I'm sure, what that tiny ass sect of shills is hoping for. But the Acolyte, I haven't actually done the math yet to see what the viewership might have been. Or if I did it at the end of the season video. I forgot the number. But I believe even the most optimistic viewership, because we don't know the minutes, obviously, the absolute most optimistic was like in the low 6 millions or something. I can't remember now. And, even Ahsoka and Acolyte averaged 10 million-ish. I mean, according to whatever claims, I actually think the Acolyte averaged more like 7 or 8 and probably deteriorated as the season went on. But either way, it's, it's a brand that every time something comes out becomes less valuable, which is just, I mean, how do you even turn the fucking tide at this point, Because I thought Skeleton Crew was another one that just seeked to be very inoffensive. It didn't try to do anything special. It just kind of wanted to avoid being terrible. So, it's just a shame. There's also some people in the comments of my latest video about Star Wars and politics calling me a fucking idiot. Oh my god, call me a fucking idiot, which I just sounded like one. Because I talk about the notion that Star Wars is always political. And there seems to be a disconnect between those crowds. But it's whatever. Yeah, that's kind of what's going on right now. It's crazy how little media there is coming out. I mean, there's just not shit. I'm actually I've been kind of watching random anime shows. A couple Korean ones I need to get caught up on. This is a really down time for media. I think the next movie that comes out that I even have any interest in is probably that Mickey 17 movie or whatever with Robert Pattinson. And that one, who knows if it'll be good, but it at least looks interesting. Probably based on a book. It's usually how it goes, I guess. But there's just not shit. Oh, Reacher starts, so that should be fun. I think Reacher starts Thursday, actually, if I remember right. I need to check the exact date. But season 2 of Reacher for me was step down from one, especially the last couple episodes. I thought it got really crazy. And, it's one of those things where it's like, how much stupidity are you okay with before you are just kind of annoyed? I mean, it's not like Reacher's high art, you know. You want a big ass dude to beat up people and hook up with chicks. Don't hold back on the violence. Like, you really don't have to get super creative. It's very very reminiscent to me of like the 90s. And just your kind of generic action shit going on. But hopefully it's fun. I mean, I've heard people that talk about the book that it's based on or seem pretty optimistic. So I hope that's a good sign. And I don't think you have to worry too much about bullshit slipping into Reacher. I mean, it's just not that kind of show. It doesn't seem to like lend itself to that. I don't think I mean, their audience doesn't even seem remotely interested in bullshit. So I don't think, you have to worry about it doing like the Netflix thing where it becomes like crazy political or whatever after a couple good seasons. Which seems to be sort of what Netflix does, is like they leave the creatives alone for a season and then they're like, oh, well, this is popular. Let's get our fucking tendrils in it and turn it to shit. So I think Reacher's pretty safe. I think it'll be just kind of is what it is type deal, as it has been the last couple seasons. Alan Richardson is gonna do his thing. I think he's fun to watch. I'm sure they'll bring in a new hot chick. Just kind of keep it going till he can't juice enough to stay in the role anymore, I guess. Outside of Reacher though, I mean, it really does feel like sort of a wasteland. Now, that's kind of part of why the timing worked out for me to get through Hunter x Hunter so fast, was just because there's not shit out. Like, what the fuck else am I gonna watch, I mean, even the anime stuff this season is really kind of all over the place. There's a lot of I don't know if this is like gonna become a thing. I mean, it sort of already was to some degree, where somebody has a class that they think is weak and then they end up actually being broken, and strong. So that's not new in and of itself. But I am not really enjoying these shows that are titled like, despite being a blank, I'm actually the strongest. And that's sort of becoming more of a thing as far as I can tell. The reason I said it's always been a thing anyway is because you have stuff like Ara Ferretta, where he's I can't remember what his actual ability is called now. Essentially, his ability is to make shit and like synthesize. I'm fucking blanking on the name. And it turns out that he can make, he ends up in a shitty situation and gets power boosted. And then he can make guns and rocket launchers and machine guns in this fantasy world on top of physical prowess and all these gifts. So it ends up being the same type of thing anyway, where, he's, he got a bullshit ability and then was actually strong. Failure Frame that I actually really like is similar. But that one, part of the reason I like it so much is because it does a really good job of, he still has weaknesses. Like, his abilities themselves are kind of broken, but he has like shit that, he's vulnerable. He's kind of God damn it. He's kind of like a glass cannon type deal, you know? Which I think is a good way to do it. If you're going to give your guy an overpowered ability, not have them also be invulnerable, which I think a lot of shit tends to do. I mean, even this morning I started that. Despite being an appraiser, I'm actually the strongest, and one of the first things that happens, which is actually a good setup. But his abilities that he gets are just broken to hell. So hopefully it does the thing that Arifureta did, where the enemies also scale up, or solo leveling is a little bit different because he doesn't get like a broken class. He just ends up getting an ability that he shouldn't have. But either way, it's just sort of a thing, and I feel like it's becoming an annoying trend to where it's going to be a lot of isekai-ish stuff is like, surprise, I'm actually awesome. Which, I don't know. To me, it's annoying. Like, that was also one of the things that made Shield Hero cool, was that the thing that he has to work out not being able to attack. Like, that never changes outside of his cursed power, which obviously there's a huge risk to him using. So a lot of what he does isn't like leading the charge himself, even though he's overpowered in some ways. A lot of what he does is just being a good leader. And I thought that was a pretty interesting way to do it. And the books are a lot more... He's a lot cooler in the books. He's a bit watered down in the anime. And in the books, he's more of like your anti-hero-ish, not edgelord. But when people try to hurt him or fuck him over, or the people he cares about, he's ruthless. Which I appreciate. Because that's another thing I can't fucking stand in anime is the whole like, oh, well, it's okay because I ended up being alive even though you left me for dead. Like, fuck that. And that shit happens a lot. A lot more than you would think if you don't watch a lot of anime. And especially, obviously there's an element of like, how severe is it that you got left for dead? And a lot of them do the thing where like, it's not like they were in a situation and couldn't be helped. A lot of them is like, oh, you deliberately left me for dead when you probably didn't even need to, just to ensure your own safety. So then later on, when they run into him, they're like, oh, it's no big deal because I'm powerful now. Fuck that. Like, your intention was to let him die. And very oftentimes in horrible ways. That's actually one thing I appreciated about the world's greatest talker, or most notorious talker, whatever the damn title was. Where he, like, the first episode, he gets fucked over. I don't even know what the fuck just happened. The first episode, he gets fucked over. And then the second episode, he comes back. And he comes back and he finds the people that fucked him over. They stole all his money. And it sort of sets up like he might forgive them. And he sells them off into slavery, which is awesome. Because it's absolutely like one where you're like, fuck those people. Like, good for you. Meanwhile, you watch another show where a guy's former party tries to sell his former party member into slavery, and he begs for forgiveness for them instead of being forced to like a lifetime in a labor camp. Like, get the fuck out with that bullshit, you know? Damn, I have the mods on for this game, and if you've played the game, you can probably tell, but it's like a lot fucking harder to kill people. And right now, it wouldn't be an issue for me except for the fact that the stupid pod with the Krogan female is vulnerable. So me being slow to kill them is like completely fucking me right now. Like normally this level I think is actually pretty easy. But, you know, that's why I put the mods in to make the game a bit harder. Make it a challenge. Of course, makes me look like a fucking idiot on stream, I guess. Dying over and over like a scrub. But that's okay. Alright, let's see if I can get it this time. So yeah. Media landscape is fucking barren. It's kind of a shame because, like, on one hand, it's nice to be able to go back and use the time to catch up on other shit. But on the other, it kind of sucks that I don't really have a ton to talk about right now because of there's just not much out. I mean, I've seen people talk about some shows that they get pretty good fan feedback, like shit, what's it called? Severance. There's that one. There's Silo. People were pretty high on. But I just haven't watched them, and now I'm like, well, shit, do I want to watch 2 full seasons, or, you know, maybe I should go back and watch the 3rd season of Deadwood after I enjoyed the first 2 seasons and then just haven't gotten around to it. I'm trying to think of what's coming out of any interest soon. And I actually don't I mean, movie-wise, it seems like July is the big month with Jurassic World, Afterbirth, Fantastic Four, and Superman. And all of those, I think, are going to be not greatly received. That's just, you know, I don't know. It's hard to say with Superman, at least, because that one, James Gunn gets a lot of benefit of the doubt. You know, so we'll see. I don't know. It's I hope they're all good. I mean, that'd be really nice to be able to give some fucking positive reviews and enjoy my time and money spent at the theater instead of every time I'm 10 minutes into a movie being like, uh-oh, here we go again. Which is how it feels, you know, so fucking often now. And it's a shame because, you know, you don't want to spend your time and money on shit that sucks. Like you don't want to walk out of the theater being like, well, fuck, I spent, you know, $30 to see some fucking movie and wasted 2.5 hours of my life. Which is how it feels most of the time these days, at least for me. It's so funny, even in my Captain America video, I never even mentioned the meta stuff or him not being, you know, Falcon not being Captain America or whatever. I didn't mention any of the race stuff. I still got comments about being a fucking hater and how I need to accept that he is the captain now and all that bullshit. It's just funny that people were like, I mean, you would seriously think that the people making the movie just go around looking for videos to criticize it so they can bitch at them. Like, the way that people take these things personally is unreal to me. I don't know if anyone else's opinion has ever influenced my enjoyment of a movie. You know, my opinion as to the quality of it, sure. Like, if they caught things that I didn't, or whatever. I mean, and that could be good or bad. The movie might have done a lot of subtle things that I didn't notice, or it might have done some really dumb things I didn't notice. But it doesn't change how you feel about it, which I think is what's weird to me about, you know, people taking it so personally. As if I'm insulting them for liking the movie or whatever. I mean, especially because I think everyone has movies that they know are bad or dumb, and they fucking love them. Like, my dad and grandmother both watch like those sci-fi channel movies, you know, like Arachno Quakes and Crocosaurus versus whatever the fuck, Sharknado. They love that shit. And they're like, yeah, it's so stupid, but I can't help but watch it and just find it fun. So I don't know. I don't know why people would get so offended by the idea that, you know, you might like something that's not objectively great or whatever word you want to use. But let me leave it here for this one. There's, like I said, there's not a ton to talk about, and I don't want these streams to devolve into me just rambling endlessly as if I'm trying to fill some kind of time quota or something. I just want to. I like to do the streams to talk about what I want to talk about, and if chat has anything it wants to talk about, which today there's no one, that's okay. Maybe everybody's busy with Valentine's brunch or something, or you're just tired of hearing me talk. It's okay. But either way, as far as the channel goes, the only things I'm considering right now are a couple things to wrap up with the Hunter x Hunter videos. One, just sort of being an overview of my opinion on the show as a whole. And then I'll probably make one about these Skeleton Crew ratings just because it's funny and also sad at the same time, let's face it. I would like for Star Wars to be good again, but you know, for it to be relevant again, it's going to need to be good first. You can't just insist on relevance and then keep putting out shit, which seems to be what they're trying to do. So I might do that, and then I don't know if there's any more anime shit that I want to talk about right now, or, you know, I have a couple long form things I need to start working on, and I've just been slacking because obviously that stuff is way more time consuming. And then just with work and life and all that shit, you know how it is. And then, yeah, maybe I'll start covering Reacher week to week. Although last season I was going to do that. And then after the first week, I was like, I don't know if this is a show that I really want to talk about weekly. But then Nerdrotic and Ryan Kinnell and a couple others did weekly streams. I enjoyed those, so I don't know. I do like to have something I'm covering every week just because. And I don't know what else there is out right now that, you know, would appeal to me or that I'd be interested in watching and covering. Because obviously there's a bunch of animated shit that I watch every week that I'm not going to make videos for. Just, I don't want to make videos just for the sake of making them. So, but all right, I'll leave it there for this one. You guys enjoy the rest of your weekend.